In the previous video posted to the channel, I showcased a specific set from Hero Factory. That set being this one right here. Now, this is actually not a canister set, rather it is part of a special edition set, but the reason I showcased this one in that previous video specifically is because it's a little more special than the other Hero Factory sets. Obviously, not because of like the armor or anything here. This video is not about this build specifically, but rather because there are two versions of this character. The early version of this character was introduced in the Bulk versus Vapor set in 2010 Bionicle, but that set came out in two variants. Really, you can't tell on the box which is which, at least not that I'm aware of, but you can tell immediately upon opening the box when you see that the silver included in the set is a different shade of silver. In 2010, LEGO came out with a brand new color for silver, which they still use to this day, called flat silver. And this flat silver color is interesting because it is notably very different from a color like pearl light gray. And in fact, I will go ahead and showcase two pieces of these colors here in this video because they are available in both shades, but also because it's in a lot of ways a step backwards. Let's go ahead and talk about metallic colors and their history in Bionicle. So Bionicle's original run, when it started all the way back in 2001, there were no pieces that were metallic, but that's not actually true because thankfully, given the Terracotta sets from 2001, the first Rahi to contain a silver piece in the form of flexible tubing. That piece was silver and was a shade of silver we would come to know later on. And this color goes by various different names. I tend to call it classic silver, but it is seen used in Bionicle from 2001 technically all the way through until 2006. But here's the thing though. You might think in 2006 that classic silver was replaced with pearl light gray, but this is actually not the case. It was replaced over time, but 2006 also included that classic silver color, meaning that some sets you could actually get two different variations of, or would have variations of the parts within them themselves, like these Thok weapons here, this being the classic silver color, this being the pearl light gray color. And this applies to several sets from 2006, though I have not confirmed if it applies to all sets that used silver. As far as I know, Vizoke did not have this same problem, but it's a possibility. However, a set like Vizon and Finrak did, meaning that you can actually get the classic Vizon Ignika mask in both shades of silver as well, and also Finrak's headpiece too. But this only actually applies to a specific type of plastic from LEGO. LEGO pieces are not all the same. There are many different types of plastic that LEGO uses, again, through to this day, but Bionicle primarily uses two types of plastic. There are definitely some exceptions to this, but notably ABS plastic and also one called polypropylene. Polypropylene and ABS are fairly similar, but they do have some distinctive differences. At least on appearance, they're similar. Let me get to that. So notably, nearly all pieces from Bionicle that have an axle on their mold are going to be polypropylene, with very few exceptions. I have a theory as for why this is, notably that LEGO didn't want these axles snapping off, and because ABS is a slightly more rigid plastic than polypropylene, it's much more prone to snapping than bending. But this is a plastic that's more prone to bending, so if, say, a weapon was to slice down and hit something, you weren't likely to have that weapon snap off at the base, which wouldn't be a very good thing when you're trying to sell a toy to kids, right? But there's an interesting side effect to these discrepancies between plastics, because I mentioned how pearl light gray was introduced to Bionicle in 2006, but that's not actually true. It was actually introduced to Bionicle all the way back in 2002. You see, ABS pieces from early Bionicle were always made in this pearl light gray color. It wasn't until 2006 that we started seeing polypropylene pieces to match this color. So there had always been a discrepancy between polypropylene, this plastic from older classic sets, and the harder plastic of ABS, which is why when you have a set like the Borak cows, for example, their feet, their sockets, their windscreen piece on their head are all this lighter shade of silver, but then you get to their weapons and the weapons are slightly different. The Toa Nuva didn't suffer from this problem because they contained no hard plastic silver pieces. However, you can get hard plastic silver pieces for the Toa Nuva in the form of their protodermic masks, but that's a separate topic. So, silver. It's definitely an interesting color with an interesting history from Bionicle, but it's not the only color to have an interesting history because, in fact, many other metallic colors received changes in 2006. And I think possibly the color that's even more standout than classic silver to pearl light gray is flat gold to pearl gold. These are very different colors. They're not even close to the same color. And I think, although I don't know the reason for this change exactly, I think it's somewhat similar to the problem with that silver, where silver was being used a bit more heavily in 2006 for hard plastic and soft plastic pieces, notably in the Paraka. Their entire torso on some of those sets was this pearl light gray color. And had it been the classic silver weapons against that, it would have stood out quite stark. The same is also true, though, for flat gold, because this color right here and this color right here, according to LEGO, are the same. This is supposedly flat silver. Or sorry, rather, flat gold. But the distinctive difference between this piece and this piece, again, is the material they're made of, this being ABS, this being the softer polypropylene plastic. By the way, if you're curious as to where this comes from, this is from the Metro Nui playset. Specifically, I think this is from the Vizorak Battle Ram. There's also a pearl light gray version that you can get from some other sets in that wave as well. They're great pieces. Moving on from there, though. So we did see a difference, a change in 2006 for this much warmer shade of gold, and more appropriate shade of gold, too. I think that this is much closer, I would hope most people would agree, to a realistic gold color than something like this. A very lovely color in its own right, but is a lot more brassy, bronzy, right? And so I tend to treat it as such. But that's just me. And now we also know that LEGO has since made changes to some other colors as well. One color that LEGO, again, uses into this day is a color called titanium metallic. There are several other names for it, but most people know it as gunmetal. Gunmetal, however, also received a change in 2010 with the introduction of Hero Factory's latter waves, let's say, right? And so it became this more cool tone of a sort of bluish hued gunmetal color. If you were familiar with the classic gunmetal from Bionicle used and introduced in the Makuta set in 2003, it is a color like this. Now, this is a hard color to showcase on camera here specifically. My camera is not great at distinguishing between specific colors, but it's worth noting that this color change was also introduced in 2006. It was made ubiquitous in 2010, but 2006, you can actually get this Paraka torso from the Avok set, the Hakan set from Vizan and Finrak, etc., in both shades of gunmetal, and they are distinctively different. I would show you both for this video, but I can't find where I placed the other one, even though I literally just used it this morning. I digress. So yeah, it's quite fascinating that this is a color that would receive an update as well. And so Bionicle is kind of, in a lot of ways, plagued, depending on how you want to see it, with various shades of silver, of gold, of gunmetal, even other metallic shades, notably the Krana and Krata from 2002 and 2003, coming in several shades of metallic colors. And of course, LEGO has dabbled in other metallic colors as well. You've got Pearl Blue, which I've showcased in a recent video. You've got an older shade of copper plus a newer shade of copper, both of which are fantastic colors, by the way. But ultimately, Bionicle came to know three distinctive colors, each of which would have their own flavors. So there is a video that I want to make coming up here in the near future where I talk about specifically Bionicle pieces that appear in essentially both shades. Now, it's going to be a wider, broader topic than just that in the video, because otherwise I'm just going to be going through like 20, 30 pieces that appear in both pearl light gray or classic silver versus flat silver, and that's not the most exciting thing to talk about. But it is interesting because there are several pieces from Bionicle that you might not be aware actually appear in both shades. So hopefully that's something you guys want to tune into. If that is, be sure you're subscribed to see that video, of course, and you can always stick around to see the other videos that will be linked in here as well. And be sure you're subscribed. Helps out the channel tremendously. I'll see you all in the next one. Take care.